Have you ever watched your family turn a gift meant for you into a prison? The morning I walked my newborn son through the biting cold, the car my grandfather gave me was being driven by someone else. When he asked one simple question, it did not just unlock the door, it exposed the ugliest secret in my home. They had not just stolen my keys, they had secretly signed my name on something far more dangerous than cash. My name is Tessa Montgomery, and at 29 years old, I was living a life that looked nothing like the one I had built, and everything like a cage made of good intentions and quiet malice. The wind in Briar Glen, Ohio, has a way of finding the gaps in your coat, specifically in February, when the ground is hard enough to break a shovel. I wrapped the wool blanket tighter around the bundle in my arms. My son, Noah, was only 7 weeks old, a tiny, fragile thing breathing against my chest, oblivious to the fact that his mother was walking along the shoulder of Route 4 because she had no other choice. My husband, Caleb, was 3,000 miles away, working a 6-month contract on an oil rig in the North Sea. The pay was life-changing, or at least that was the plan. We were supposed to save enough to buy our own place, cash, and start fresh. But with Caleb gone and the baby coming early, my parents insisted I stay with them. They called it support. They called it family duty. But after 2 months, I knew exactly what it was. It was a correctional facility with floral wallpaper. I adjusted Noah's weight in the carrier. My back ached, a dull, throbbing reminder of a difficult labor. But the physical pain was easier to manage than the humiliation burning in my cheeks. We were out of formula. It was a simple, stupid logistical failure. I had put a canister on the grocery list 3 days ago, but my mother had scratched it out. She told me I should be trying harder to breastfeed. That formula was for lazy mothers, and she would not enable my lack of effort with her money. My own bank account was technically accessible, but every time I tried to use my card, my mother would ask to see the receipt, sighing loudly about how Caleb was working himself to the bone while I frittered away our future on things we did not strictly need. So here I was, walking. The irony of the situation was parked in my parents' driveway back at the house, a silver Mercedes-Benz GLC. It was beautiful, safe, and equipped with heated seats that would have kept Noah warm on a morning where the temperature was hovering around 20 degrees. My grandfather, Walter Montgomery, had given it to me as a wedding gift that doubled as a baby present. I remember the day he handed me the box. He is a man who speaks little but sees everything, a retired industrialist who believes in quality and independence. He told me the car was for safety. He told me it was so I would never be stuck. I had driven it exactly 0 times since bringing Noah home from the hospital. My younger sister, Lena, had taken the keys the day I got back. She said it was just to move the car so Dad could get the mower out. Then, the next day, she said she needed to run a quick errand and my car was blocking hers. By the end of the first week, the keys were on her keychain. When I asked for them back, my mother intervened. She told me I was too hormonal to drive. She said sleep deprivation made me a danger on the road. She said Lena was doing me a favor by keeping the engine running so the battery would not die while I recovered. It sounded reasonable if you did not look at it too closely, but I watched from the nursery window as Lena drove my car to brunch, to the mall, to meet her friends. I saw her post pictures on social media of her hand on the steering wheel. The Mercedes logo perfectly framed, with captions about grinding hard and treating herself. I was not recovering. I was disappearing. I had tried to take my old bicycle this morning. It was a desperate move. I thought if I could just strap Noah into the carrier and ride the 2 miles to the pharmacy, I could get the formula with the $20 bill I had hidden in my winter boot. But when I dragged the bike out of the shed, both tires were slashed, not punctuated by a nail, but slashed, long, clean cuts on the sidewalls. I did not have proof Lena did it, but I knew she hated the eyesore of the bike next to the Mercedes. A semi-truck roared past us, spraying a mist of dirty slush onto my jeans. I flinched, shielding Noah's head with my hand. I was freezing. My fingers were numb inside my gloves. I felt a surge of rage so hot it almost made me dizzy. This was not normal. Families help each other. They do not force a postpartum woman to walk miles in freezing temperatures because she refuses to beg for basic sustenance. I kept my head down, focusing on placing one boot in front of the other. Just one more mile. I could do 1 mile. Then, a car slowed down beside me. I did not look up at first. I assumed it was a neighbor slowing down to gawk, or maybe a creep. I tightened my grip on the pepper spray attached to my keychain. The car rolled along at my walking pace, the tires crunching on the gravel shoulder. It was a large, dark sedan, black and polished despite the salt on the roads. The passenger window rolled down with a quiet electric hum. "Tessa?" The voice was gravelly and familiar. I stopped and looked up. It was Grandpa Walter. He was sitting in the back seat of his Lincoln Town car. His driver, Mr. Henderson, looking at me through the rear-view mirror with a concerned expression. Walter Montgomery did not look like a man who was 80 years old. He sat straight, wearing a wool coat that probably cost more than my parents' mortgage payments for the year. He had sharp blue eyes that usually held a look of amused detachment, but right now, there was no amusement. He looked at me. He looked at the baby strapped to my chest. He looked at the red, wind-burned skin on my face and the slush on my jeans. He looked at the empty road ahead of me and the long stretch of nothing behind me. "Get in," he said. It was not a suggestion. Mr. Henderson was out of the car in a second, opening the rear door for me. The heat from the interior hit me like a physical blow, rushing over my frozen skin. I hesitated for a fraction of a second. The conditioning from my mother screaming in my head that I shouldn't bother people, that I shouldn't be a burden. But Noah shifted against me and let out a small, cold whimper. That broke the spell. I climbed in. The leather was soft and warm. The car smelled of Old Spice and peppermints, the scent of my childhood. I unbuttoned my coat immediately to let the warmth reach Noah. Walter waited until the door was shut and the car was moving again before he spoke. He did not ask how I was. He did not ask about the weather. He turned his body slightly toward me, his face unreadable. "Where are you going, Tessa?" "The pharmacy," I said, my voice cracking. I hated how weak I sounded. "Noah needs formula. I ran out." Walter nodded slowly. He did not ask why I was not driving. He did not ask why my mother had not gone for me. He just looked at my hands, which were shaking as I tried to pull the blanket away from Noah's face. He watched me for a long moment, processing the data points, the walking, the cold, the desperation. Then he asked the question, "I gave you a car, right?" He said it calmly. It was not an accusation against me. It was a verification of a fact. I gave you a car. It was a statement of reality that clashed violently with the reality he was witnessing. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was the moment. The script my mother and father had drilled into me for 29 years was to protect the image of the family. Don't air our dirty laundry. Don't make us look bad. Don't cause trouble. If I told him the truth, I would be causing trouble. I would be ungrateful. I would be starting a war. I thought about lying. I could say it was in the shop. I could say I lost the keys. I could say I was afraid to drive in the snow. Then I looked down at Noah. His tiny nose was red from the cold. He was hungry, and he was relying on me to be the barrier between him and a world that did not care if he froze. If I lied now, I was not protecting the family. I was agreeing with them. I was agreeing that I did not deserve the gift. I was agreeing that Lena deserved my safety more than my son did. I looked up at Walter. His eyes were waiting. He knew. He just needed me to say it. "I do not have the keys," I said. The words came out sharper than I intended. "Lena is driving it." The air in the car seemed to drop 10 degrees, but not from the cold outside. Walter blinked once. It was the only sign of reaction he gave. But for a man like him, it was an earthquake. "Lena is driving it," he repeated, testing the weight of the sentence. "And why is Lena driving my great-grandson's car while my great-grandson is being walked down Route 4 in freezing temperatures?" "She says it is for convenience," I said, and now that the dam had cracked, the water was rushing out. "Mom says I am too tired to drive. They said it is better if Lena uses it to run errands for the house, but I never see the errands. Grandpa, I just see her leaving. Walter turned his head to look out the window at the gray, bleak landscape passing by. His jaw set hard. I saw a muscle twitch in his cheek. I had seen him angry before, but usually at incompetent business partners or politicians. I had never seen him look at his own family dynamics with this kind of cold, calculating clarity. Convenience, he muttered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. He did not dial immediately. He just held it, tapping his thumb against the side. Mr. Henderson, he said to the driver. Yes, sir? We are not going to the pharmacy yet. Take us to the station. I froze. The station? Grandpa? No, I just need to get the milk and go back. If I'm gone too long, Mom gets angry. She tracks my phone. Walter looked at me again, and this time, the softness was gone. It was replaced by the steel that had built his empire. She tracks your phone? He asked. I nodded, feeling the shame rise up my neck. For the baby's safety, she says. And the car is for your safety, he said. And the bank account I set up for you when you turned 18? The one designed to prevent exactly this kind of situation? I stared at him. What bank account? The silence that followed was louder than the engine. Walter's expression shifted from anger to something far more dangerous. It was the look of a man realizing he had been robbed, not by strangers, but by the people he had invited to dinner every Thanksgiving for 30 years. Tessa, he said, his voice very low, I have deposited $2,000 into a checking account in your name every month since you went to college. Caleb knows about it. It was supposed to be your safety net. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. $2,000 a month. For 10 years. That was money that could have paid for a down payment. That was money that meant I never had to ask my mother for permission to buy milk. I have never seen that money, I whispered. Walter nodded. He did not look surprised anymore. He looked resolved. He tapped the divider glass. Mr. Henderson, change of plans. We are going to the police station, and then we are going to the bank. Grandpa, I said, panic flaring in my chest. They are my parents. Lena is my sister. If we go to the police, there is no going back. Walter reached over and covered my cold hand with his warm, dry one. His grip was firm. You are right, Tessa, he said. There is no going back. You were walking in the snow with a newborn while your sister drove a $60,000 car I paid for. That is not family. That is theft. He looked at Noah, sleeping fitfully against my chest, and his eyes narrowed. And I will be damned if I let them steal his future too. The warmth inside the Lincoln was absolute, a heavy, expensive silence that wrapped around us like a thick blanket. But instead of comforting me, it made my skin burn. The sudden shift from the biting wind to the climate-controlled interior sent needles of pain through my frozen fingers and toes. I wanted to weep. The urge rose in my throat, a hot, choking lump of exhaustion and relief, but I swallowed it down until my chest ached. I could not cry. Crying was dangerous. Crying was the ammunition my mother used against me. Every time a tear slipped out in the last 7 weeks, she would sigh that heavy performative sigh and tell my father that I was unraveling again. She would say I was too emotional to make decisions, too fragile to handle the checkbook, too unstable to be trusted with my own life. If I cried now, even here in the safety of my grandfather's car, I felt like I would be handing them another victory. So I stared at the back of the driver's headrest and focused on breathing in time with the sleeping rhythm of my son. Walter did not look at me immediately. He let the silence stretch, giving me space to stop shivering. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than it had been when he ordered the driver to the police station, but the weight behind the words was crushing. It is not just the car, is it, Tessa? It was not a question I could dodge. I looked at him, and for the first time, I let the mask of the dutiful, grateful daughter slip. No, I whispered. It is everything. The dam broke in my mind, unleashing a torrent of memories I had been suppressing to survive. It started small. It started with the mail. When I first moved back in, I would ask if any letters had come for me. Bank statements, insurance updates, letters from Caleb. My mother would wave a dismissive hand while chopping vegetables and tell me she had put them in a safe place so I would not lose them in my postpartum fog. She used that phrase like a weapon. Postpartum fog. Then it was the phone. She would ask to see photos of Noah, take my phone from my hands, and walk into the other room. 10 minutes would pass. 15. When I went to retrieve it, she would be scrolling, not through photos, but through my messages with Caleb. When I confronted her, she looked wounded. She said she was just checking to make sure I was not burdening him with my stress while he was doing dangerous work. She said she was protecting his focus. She deleted messages she felt were too whiny. She curated my marriage for me because she decided I was incapable of doing it myself. They took my mail first, I told Walter, my voice gaining a little strength. Then they told me I was forgetting things. I would put my debit card on the dresser, and the next day it would be gone. Mom would find it in the kitchen drawer or the laundry room and look at me with this pitying expression. She would say, "Oh, Tessa, you are losing your mind. Honey, let me hold on to it. You will just lose it again." Walter's hands tightened on his knees. "And you let her?" "I believed her," I said, the shame burning hotter than the thaw in my fingers. "I was so tired. Grandpa, I was sleeping 2 hours a night. I thought maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was losing track of everything. So I gave her the pin. She said she would just pick up groceries for the house since I was eating their food." But the groceries were not the only thing changing. I remembered the first time I saw the balance on the ATM screen when I snuck out to buy vitamins. The number was thousands of dollars lower than it should have been. Caleb sent money every 2 weeks. Good money. It should have been piling up. Instead, it was draining away like water in a cracked cup. When I asked my mother about it, the atmosphere in the kitchen had turned ice cold. She slammed a pot onto the stove and asked if I had any idea how much electricity a newborn used. She asked if I knew the cost of the organic food she cooked for me to keep my milk supply up. She called me ungrateful. She said, "I am carrying this entire family on my back, and you are counting pennies?" She made me feel small. She made me feel like a parasite. I stopped asking, I admitted to Walter, looking down at Noah's sleeping face. I was scared they would kick me out. Caleb is gone for 4 more months. I have nowhere else to go. "And Lena?" Walter asked. The name came out sharp. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. "Lena is the princess. While I was begging Mom for $20 to buy the sensitive formula Noah needs because the regular kind hurts his stomach. Lena was coming home with shopping bags from the city, designer boots, a new watch. She posts them online. Grandpa. She captions them, self-care, and treat yourself. She drives my car to the mall to spend money that I am pretty sure belongs to my husband, while I walk in the snow because I cannot afford gas." I paused, a terrifying thought finally taking shape in the safety of this car. It was a thought I had pushed away because it was too dark, too monstrous to pin on the people who raised me. "It is not just greed," I said, my voice trembling. "If they were just greedy, they would ask, but they are not asking. They are erasing me. They are making me look incompetent so they can take over. They need me to be weak. They need me to be the crazy, unstable new mom, so no one questions why they have control over my assets." I looked at Walter. His face was gray, staring straight ahead, jaw set like stone. He was seeing the full picture now. It wasn't just a family being messy. It was a systematic dismantling of a person. I thought about the papers my mother had slid across the table last week. She said they were just updated insurance forms for Noah. She had been in a rush, tapping her foot, holding the pen out to me while the baby was crying in my arms. "Just sign here, Tessa. Hurry up. He is hungry." I had signed them. I had not read them. The blood drained from my face. "Grandpa," I said, and the word hung in the air, heavy with realization. If they are willing to take the car, and they are willing to drain the account, they will not stop there. They are not just managing my life, they are stealing it. I looked down at my son. He was the only thing that was truly mine, and they were using his existence as the excuse to rob us both blind. If I stayed, if I let this continue for one more week, there would be nothing left. No money for a house, no car, no future, just me, trapped in that bedroom, grateful for whatever scraps they decided to let me keep. The fear that had paralyzed me for 2 months suddenly evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. It was the same clarity I saw in my grandfather's eyes. I took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of peppermint and leather, and finally spoke the truth that severed the cord. "This is not a family dispute," I said, looking Walter dead in the eye. "This is a crime. Mr. Henderson did not ask for directions. He simply engaged the turn signal and merged the Lincoln onto the exit ramp that led toward the municipal center of Briar Glen. The silence in the car had shifted from heavy to kinetic, a vibrating tension that made my stomach turn over. "Grandpa, wait," I said, my hand instinctively covering Noah's head as if to shield him from the fallout of what we were about to do. "If we walk into a police station and file a report against Mom and Dad, that is it. There is no undoing that. They will say I am unfit. They will say I am vindictive. They have money for lawyers, and I have nothing. They could take Noah." The fear was a physical thing, a cold knot in my throat. In Ohio, grandparents' rights and familial custody battles could get messy, especially when one party claimed the mother was suffering from postpartum instability. I had no home of my own, no current income, and my husband was on an oil rig in the North Sea. On paper, I looked like a disaster. Walter turned to me. He did not offer empty comfort. He did not pat my hand. He looked at me with the same steely pragmatism that had built his business empire. "They are counting on that fear. Tessa," he said, his voice level and unyielding. "They are banking on the fact that you value the idea of family more than you value your own survival. They use the word family as a shield to protect themselves from consequences. But the law does not call that love. The law calls it exploitation. And right now, you are the only one who can decide which version of the truth goes on the record." The car came to a smooth stop in front of the brick precinct building. Walter waited. He was not forcing me out. He was offering me the weapon. I had to be the one to pick it up. I looked at Noah. I thought about the formula I could not buy. I thought about Lena driving my heated car while my son shivered. "Let's go," I said. Inside, the station smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was quiet for a Tuesday morning. We were directed to a desk where a female officer sat typing at a computer. Her nameplate read, Sergeant Vance. She looked to be in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that had seen every variation of domestic drama this town had to offer. She looked up, scanning the three of us, an elderly man in a bespoke coat, a young woman in a wind-burned jacket holding a baby, and a chauffeur standing by the door. "How can I help you?" she asked, her tone neutral, bordering on bored. "I need to report a theft," I said. My voice shook, so I cleared my throat and tried again. "Multiple thefts. And fraud." Sergeant Vance gestured to the chairs. "All right, who is the suspect? A stranger? A neighbor?" "My parents," I said. "And my sister." Vance's expression shifted instantly. The boredom was replaced by a look of weary patience. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Ma'am, if this is a dispute about borrowing property or shared household finances, we usually recommend civil court. Unless there is physical violence, police do not typically get involved in family arguments over who drove whose car." "It is not a dispute," Walter cut in. His voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that made Vance sit up straighter. "This is about unauthorized possession of a vehicle titled solely in my granddaughter's name, and the systematic draining of bank accounts she did not authorize anyone to access." Vance looked at Walter, assessing him, then turned her focus back to me. She pulled a notepad closer. "Let's start with the vehicle. Is the title in your name?" "Yes," I said. "It is a silver Mercedes GLC. My grandfather bought it for me. I have never even held the keys. My sister took them the day I came home from the hospital. When I ask for them, they refuse. Today, I had to walk 2 miles in freezing temperatures with a newborn because they would not let me use my own car. Vance wrote something down. And the accounts? My husband sends his paycheck to a joint account, I explained, forcing myself to be precise. I have not been able to access the full amount for 2 months. My mother has my debit card. She says she is managing it for me because I am forgetful, but the balance is thousands of dollars lower than it should be, and I am not the one spending it. Vance tapped her pen against the desk. Did you sign a power of attorney? Did you add them as authorized users on the account? No, I said firmly. Never. She claims she is helping me, I added, feeling the need to explain the manipulation. She tells everyone I am unstable. That is a common tactic in coercive control cases, Vance said, her tone changing from dismissive to clinical. She was listening now. Isolation, financial restriction, gaslighting regarding mental health. It is a pattern we see. Then Walter placed a single sheet of paper on the desk. He had pulled it from his inside pocket. It was a printout from his own banking app. There is something else, Walter said. I established a trust specifically for the child's education and immediate childcare needs. It releases a stipend of $1,500 on the first of every month to an account under Tessa's Social Security number. I set it up to auto-deposit. He pointed to the line on the paper. The money has been swept out of that account within hours of deposit for the last 2 months, Walter said. Tessa did not even know the account existed until 20 minutes ago. The room went dead silent. Sergeant Vance stared at the paper, then she looked at me. You had no knowledge of these funds? No, ma'am, I said. And you have not received any bank statements regarding this account? My mother intercepts the mail, I said. She says she is keeping it safe. Vance stood up. The air in the room had changed completely. It was no longer a domestic squabble. It was a felony investigation. The family dispute label had just been ripped off, revealing federal mail fraud and grand larceny beneath. Intercepting mail is a federal offense, Vance said, her voice sharp and professional. And accessing an account you are not a signatory on is bank fraud. If they are impersonating you to gain access, that is identity theft. She turned to her computer and began typing rapidly. I am opening a case file. We are going to need to pull records from the banks. I want you to list every single person who has access to the house, and exactly when you realize the mail was being withheld. She printed out a form and slid it across the desk toward me. It was a formal complaint. If you sign this, Vance said, looking me in the eye, we are going to investigate. We will contact the banks to flag the accounts for fraud. We will likely pay a visit to the residence to recover the vehicle. This is not a warning shot. Mrs. Montgomery, this is a criminal proceeding. My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. I looked at the black ink on the white paper. Signing this meant the end of Sunday dinners. It meant the end of pretending. It meant my mother would scream, and my father would call me a traitor. But then, I looked at the radiator hissing in the corner of the station, and I remembered the feeling of the wind cutting through my jeans while Lena sat on heated leather seats. I remembered the formula I could not buy. I pressed the pen to the paper. My hand shook, but my vision was clear. I signed my name, Tessa Montgomery. It is done, I said. Good, Walter said, standing up. Now, let's go get you a lawyer who can make sure the rest of their house of cards comes down legally. Ashford Hills was not just a change of scenery. It was a different planet. My grandfather's estate was 40 miles away from the suffocating subdivision where my parents lived, tucked into rolling hills that felt untouched by the grime of my reality. When we pulled up the long gravel driveway, the silence of the place hit me first. There were no neighbors peering through blinds, no mother pacing the kitchen floor, no sister revving an engine in the driveway, just the sound of wind in the dormant oak trees and the crunch of tires on stone. Walter wasted no time. He did not treat me like a wounded bird that needed rest. He treated me like a soldier who needed reinforcements. We were barely settled in the guest wing, a space larger than my entire apartment back in the city, when the team arrived. They set up in the library, a room that smelled of cedar and old paper. The first to arrive was Marin Pike. I had heard her name before in hushed tones around town. She was the kind of civil attorney you hired when you wanted to scorch the earth. She walked in wearing a suit that looked sharp enough to cut glass, carrying a briefcase that seemed to contain the fate of anyone foolish enough to cross her clients. She did not offer me a hug or a pitying look. She shook my hand firmly and looked at Noah, who was sleeping in a bassinet Walter had miraculously produced from storage, with a nod of respect. Behind her was a man who introduced himself as Gavin Rourke. If Pike was the sword, Rourke was the scalpel. He was a forensic accountant, a man who spoke with the dry, clipped cadence of a machine. He did not look at me. He looked at the stack of bank statements Walter had printed out, his eyes darting across the numbers like he was reading a code I could not see. "Let's begin," Pike said, sitting at the mahogany table and opening a fresh legal pad. I sat opposite her, feeling small in the oversized leather chair. Walter stood by the fireplace, watching. He was not leading this meeting. He was funding the war, but he was letting the generals command it. Pike asked for my phone first. I handed it over, my pulse spiking as she unlocked it and began scrolling through the messages from my mother and Lena. I felt a flush of shame, wondering if she would judge me for how weak I sounded in my replies, apologizing for things I had not done, begging for money that was mine. "Look at the syntax," Pike said, turning the screen toward Rourke but speaking to me. "Notice the repetition. You are unwell. You are not thinking clearly. We are doing this for your protection. This is not random nagging. Tessa, this is a scripted narrative. They are building a paper trail to establish your incompetence. If this ever went to a custody hearing, they would print these out and say, 'Look, even the mother admits she's confused and needs our help.' It is coercion," Pike stated flatly, "and it is defamation of your maternal capacity. They are manufacturing a crisis to justify their control." Hearing a stranger say it with such clinical authority made the fog in my head clear a little more. It was not love, it was a strategy. Rourke looked up from the papers. He had a laptop open now, and his fingers were flying across the keys. "Mrs. Montgomery," Rourke said, "I need you to be very precise. Did you ever, at any point, sign a power of attorney document granting your mother or father the right to act on your behalf regarding financial matters?" "No," I said. "Never." "Did you sign a joint account agreement adding them as signatories to your primary checking account, or the account your husband deposits into?" "No," I repeated. "I am the only name on those accounts, or I should be." Rourke nodded, his expression grim. "Then we have a significant problem for them. I am looking at the transaction metadata from the bank's preliminary access logs. There are logins occurring from an IP address associated with your parents' residence at times when the geolocation data from your phone places you at the pediatrician or the park. Whoever is logging in is bypassing two-factor authentication. Is your phone ever out of your possession?" "My mother takes it," I said, the realization landing like a stone in my stomach. "She takes it to give me a break while I nap. She must be using it to approve the login codes." Rourke typed something rapidly. "That is unauthorized access under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. We are not just looking at theft. We are looking at wire fraud." Pike closed her notebook. The sound was final. "I am filing an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order and an asset freeze. We are going to lock every account associated with your Social Security number. If they try to buy a gallon of milk with your money 10 minutes from now, the card will decline. I am also demanding a full production of transaction history from the bank for the last 12 months. "They will be furious," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "They rely on that money. My dad's business has been slow. I think they have been using my husband's checks to pay the mortgage." "That is not your problem," Walter said from the fireplace. His voice was low and hard. "If they cannot pay their mortgage without stealing from their daughter, they should not live in that house." He walked over to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Tessa, listen to me. This is the hardest part. You are going to go dark. You do not answer the phone. You do not reply to texts. You do not open the door if they find us. From this second forward, you have no voice. Marin is your voice. Gavin is your voice. You are just Noah's mother. Focus on that. That night was the first time in 2 months that I slept in a room with a lock on the door that I controlled. The guest room was quiet. I put Noah in the bassinet, right next to the bed. I laid there for a long time, waiting for the anxiety to choke me, waiting for my mother to burst in and tell me I was holding the baby wrong or that I was being selfish for sleeping while she cleaned. But nobody came. The silence was so profound it felt heavy. Outside the window, the winter moon illuminated the snow-covered fields of Ashford Hills. It was peaceful. For the first time since leaving the hospital, I closed my eyes and my brain simply shut down. I slept. Deep, dreamless, exhausted sleep. I woke up to the sun streaming through the heavy curtains. It was 8:30 in the morning. I had slept for 7 straight hours. Panic flared for a second. Had Noah cried? Had I missed a feeding? But he was stirring gently, making soft cooing sounds, safe and warm. I sat up, stretching limbs that felt less heavy than they had yesterday. I felt a moment of hope. Maybe it was over. Maybe the police report and the lawyers had scared them off. Maybe they would just retreat. Then I looked at the nightstand. I had forgotten to turn my phone off. I had just silenced it. The screen was lit up with a wall of notifications. The sheer volume of them made the device look like it was vibrating with rage. 42 missed calls, 63 text messages, 8 voicemails. I picked it up, my hand trembling slightly despite the good night's sleep. The preview on the lock screen showed a snippet of a message from my sister, Lena, sent at 3 in the morning. "You think you can lock us out? You have no idea what you just started. Mom is calling Caleb." The peace of the farm shattered instantly. They weren't retreating. They were counterattacking. And they were going after the one person I couldn't protect from here. The barrage of notifications did not stop. It was a digital assault, a vibration that buzzed against the wooden nightstand every 3 seconds. I picked up the phone, intending to turn it off, but my eyes caught the preview of the messages. In the span of 8 hours, the tone had shifted violently. Yesterday, when they first realized I was gone, the messages were frantic, dripping with fake concern. "Where are you? We are worried sick. Please just let us know you are safe." But as the silence from my end stretched into the morning, the mask fell off. The concern curdled into accusation. "You are being selfish," my mother wrote, "taking a newborn out of his stable home just to prove a point. You are not thinking about Noah. You are thinking about yourself." My father's texts were short commands. "Bring the car back. Now. You are acting like a child." But it was Lena's messages that made my blood run cold. She did not yell. She calculated. "If you do not answer me in the next hour, I am going to have to call Caleb's parents," she wrote. "I will have to tell them that you are having another episode. I will have to tell them I am scared you are not lucid enough to feed Noah. Do you want them to call Child Protective Services? Because I will do it to save that baby from you." My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. This was my deepest fear. Weaponized. They knew I was terrified of being seen as a bad mother. They knew I was exhausted, and they were ready to paint my exhaustion as insanity to get me back under their roof. "Do not delete a single one." Marin Pike's voice cut through my panic. I looked up. Marin and Walter were standing in the doorway of the guest room. Marin was holding a cup of coffee, looking at me not with pity, but with the sharp focus of a predator watching prey make a mistake. "Screenshot everything," Marin instructed, walking over to sit on the edge of the bed. "Capture the timestamps. Capture the sender ID. Do not reply. Not one word. Every threat they make is a brick in the wall we are building between you and them." "They are saying I am crazy," I whispered, showing her Lena's text. "They are going to tell everyone I am unfit." Walter walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered hills. He looked calm, almost dangerously so. "Of course they are," he said softly. "It is the extinction burst. Tessa, when a controller loses their grip, they do not shrug and walk away. They panic. They scream. They try to burn down your reputation, because it is the only leverage they have left. They are not saying these things because they are true. They are saying them because they are terrified." I did as Marin asked. I spent the next hour documenting the abuse. It felt dirty, reading their words over and over, letting the poison seep in. Ungrateful, thief, kidnapper, but Marin sat right there with me, turning each insult into a piece of evidence. This goes under harassment, she would say. This one goes under coercion. Downstairs in the library, Gavin Rourke was building a different kind of picture. When we came down for lunch, the mahogany table was covered in spreadsheets. Rourke had that same robotic intensity, but there was a tightness around his mouth that had not been there yesterday. "Tessa," Rourke said, not looking up from his laptop, "I need to verify a pattern." I sat down, bouncing Noah on my knee. "What pattern?" "I have cross-referenced the withdrawals from your primary checking account with the text message logs you provided from the last 2 months," Rourke said. He turned the laptop around. The screen showed a calendar with red spikes on certain days. "On November 14th, you texted your mother asking if she could pick up diapers because you were out of cash," Rourke said. "She replied that she would, but she lectured you about budgeting." "I remember," I said, feeling the sting of that memory. "She said I was bleeding them dry." On that same day, Rourke pointed to a red bar on the screen. "A withdrawal of $300 was made from your account at an ATM 3 miles from your parents' house. How much do diapers cost, Tessa?" $40, I said. "Maybe 50 for a big box." "And on December 2nd, Rourke continued, his finger sliding to the next date, "you asked for money for a pediatrician copay, $30. On that day, $400 was withdrawn." I stared at the screen, the pattern repeated over and over. Every time I had humbled myself to ask for a basic necessity, formula, wipes, a copay, they used my request as a cover event. They would take the card, go to the store, buy the item I needed, and then drain hundreds of dollars in cash for themselves. They were charging me a fee, I realized, my voice hollow. Every time I asked for help, they were robbing me. "It is worse than that," Rourke said. "They were using your needs as the justification for the withdrawals in case anyone ever looked. If the bank asked, they could say, 'Oh, Tessa needed money for the baby.' They hid their theft behind your son." I looked at Noah. I had felt so guilty every time I asked them for anything. I had felt like a burden, but the whole time, I was not the burden, I was the bank. "I want a restraining order," I said. The words came out hard, surprising even me. Marin Pike looked up from her notes, a slow smile spreading across her face. "I have the draft ready. We are filing for an ex parte order of protection based on financial abuse, harassment, and the threat of custodial interference. Once the judge signs this, if they come within 500 feet of you or this baby, they go to jail." "And the phone calls?" I asked. "You are going to answer one," Marin said. "Just one, and you are going to say exactly what I tell you to say." 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. It was my mother. I looked at Marin. She nodded. I slid the green button to accept and put the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. "Tessa." My mother's voice was a shriek, breathless and hysterical. "Oh my God. Finally, do you have any idea what you are doing to us? Your father is having chest pains. You need to bring that car back and bring my grandson home before—" I cut her off. My voice was shaking, but the words were solid iron. "Mom, stop." She paused, shocked by the interruption. "Excuse me?" "I am safe," I said. "Noah is safe. We are not coming back." "You listen to me, you ungrateful little—" "No," I said, louder this time. "You listen. From this moment on, I am no longer discussing anything with you. Any further communication regarding me, my son, or my property must go through my attorney, Marin Pike." "Attorney?" She laughed, a high, nervous sound. "You do not have money for an attorney. Tessa, you do not even have money for milk." "I do now," I said, "because you are not holding my wallet anymore." I hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But for the first time in months, it wasn't fear, it was adrenaline. I had done it. I had drawn the line. "Well done," Walter said quietly. But Gavin Rourke did not clap. He did not look relieved. He was holding a piece of paper he had just pulled from a fax machine that Walter kept in the corner office. The machine had been whirring in the background, printing documents from the bank's fraud department. "Mrs. Montgomery," Rourke said. His voice was different now, urgent. "We have a problem." I looked over. "What is it? Did they drain the account?" "We already knew about the accounts," Rourke said. He walked over and placed the paper on the table in front of me. It was a dense legal document, a loan application for a home equity line of credit. But it wasn't for a house I owned. It was a co-signer agreement for a business loan. "This is a loan application for your father's contracting business," Rourke said. "Dated 3 weeks ago. It lists a guarantor who is putting up collateral." He pointed to the bottom of the page. There, in black ink, was a signature. Tessa Montgomery. I stared at it. It looked like my handwriting. It had the same loop on the T, the same slant on the M, but I had never seen this document in my life. "I did not sign this," I said, looking up at Rourke. "I swear, I did not sign this." "I believe you," Rourke said grimly, "but according to this bank, you just co-signed a $50,000 loan, and if your father defaults, they are coming for you." Walter slammed his hand down on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "They forged her signature on a commercial loan?" "It appears so," Rourke said, "which means this just went from theft to federal bank fraud. And Tessa, if we do not prove this is a forgery, that debt is legally yours." The document lying on the mahogany table seemed to pulse with a radioactive heat. It was a standard bank authorization form, the kind used to add a secondary signer to an account, effectively handing over the keys to the vault. Gavin Rourke had highlighted the signature block in yellow, and as I leaned in closer, the air in the library felt like it had been sucked out by a vacuum. "Look closely, Tessa," Rourke said, his voice devoid of the earlier urgency, replaced now by the cold precision of a man assembling a bomb. "This document was filed 11 days ago. It grants your sister, Lena, full unrestricted access to the checking account where your grandfather's trust deposits land. But look at the signature." I stared at the black ink. At first glance, it was my name. It had the same slant, the same hurried loop on the capital T that I had developed in college. But as I stared, the illusion fractured. The pressure was wrong. The ink was too heavy at the start of the letters, as if the hand holding the pen had hesitated, calculating the angle before committing. It lacked the fluid, muscle memory speed of a person writing their own name. It was a drawing of a signature, not a signature itself. "It is a forgery," I said, the realization settling in my gut like lead. "It is good, but it is not mine." I cross my T's higher up, and see that little hitch in the M? I do not do that. Maren Pike was already on her phone, pacing the length of the oriental rug. "I want a handwriting expert on retainer by noon," she snapped into the receiver. "I do not care about his schedule. Tell him we have a potential felony fraud involving a vulnerable postpartum adult, and get a subpoena drafted for the bank's security footage. If this document was signed in a branch, there is a camera, and if Lena or your mother walked into that bank and sat in that chair pretending to be you, we have them on tape committing identity theft." She hung up and turned to us, her eyes blazing. "If they faked this, the shield of family misunderstanding is gone. This is deliberate, calculated malice." Rourke was not done. He tapped a key on his laptop, bringing up a new spreadsheet. "The forgery is just the key to the door. I followed the money once they got inside, once Lena was added to the account. She executed a wire transfer of $12,000 to an entity listed as the MH Family Future Fund." Walter, who had been standing by the window watching the snowfall, turned slowly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were dark. "The MH Family Future Fund," he repeated, tasting the words like spoiled milk. "Your mother mentioned that to me last Christmas. She said they were setting up a diversified portfolio to help all the children with down payments on homes. She called it a communal safety net." "It is a shell," Rourke said. cutting through the nice sentiment with a blade of facts. I ran the routing number. It is not an investment brokerage. It is not a savings bond. It is a standard personal checking account at a credit union in the next county, solely in your mother's name. So they moved my money to their private account, I said, feeling a wave of nausea. And they spent it, Rourke added. He swiveled the laptop so we could all see the itemized list of transactions. I expected to see mortgage payments. I expected to see overdue electric bills, or maybe payments to suppliers for my dad's struggling business. I was prepared to feel a sick sort of pity for them, desperate people doing desperate things to keep a roof over their heads. I was not prepared for what I saw. $3,000 to a luxury travel agency, Rourke read, his finger tracing the line. Deposit for a Caribbean cruise, scheduled for March, $2,500 to a high-end furniture gallery, $1,200 to a designer boutique in Columbus, and $1,500 to pay off a generic credit card bill. I stared at the words Caribbean cruise. While I was walking in the snow because I did not have $20 for formula, they were booking a vacation. While I was reusing disposable diapers because I was terrified of asking for money, they were buying furniture. They were not drowning, they were partying, and they were funding their lifestyle by cannibalizing mine. I did not cry. The tears that had been threatening to fall for days simply evaporated. In their place, something else formed. It was a cold, hard sensation, like the ice forming on the eaves of the house. I thought of Noah. I thought of the way he looked at me when he was hungry, trusting me to provide for him. They had taken the money meant for his education, for his safety, for his very survival, and they had turned it into a tropical getaway and a new sofa. They had looked at my son and seen a payday. They stole from a baby, I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears, flat, devoid of inflection. They did not just steal from me. They stole from Noah. They took his future and bought tickets to the beach. Maren Pike stopped pacing. She looked at me, and for the first time, she looked genuinely angry, not professionally angry, but humanly angry. This changes the landscape, Tessa, Maren said, leaning her hands on the table. Civil court is about restitution, getting your money back. But forgery? Wire fraud? Elder financial abuse because of the source of the funds? That is criminal court, if we prove this, and I believe we will. We are talking about prison time. We are talking about felony records. She looked at Walter, then back at me. I need you to understand the gravity of this. If we pull this thread, it does not just unravel the sweater, it hangs them with it. I looked at the forged signature again. I looked at the curve of the letters where my sister had tried to become me so she could rob me. I imagined her practicing it. I imagined my mother standing over her, nodding approval, telling her it was for the best, telling her I would just waste the money anyway. They had made their choice. They had chosen the cruise over my dignity. They had chosen the furniture over my son's hunger. I understand, I said. Do it. Walter walked over to the table. He picked up the printout of the cruise deposit and looked at it for a long moment. He was a man who believed in family above almost everything else. He had spent his life building a legacy to protect the people in that house. To see that legacy twisted into a weapon against his own granddaughter clearly broke something inside him. He set the paper down. He did not slam it. He placed it gently, with finality. They thought you were weak, Tessa, Walter said quietly. They thought I was old and distracted. They thought the law was a suggestion, something they could manipulate with a fake signature and a sad story. He looked at Pike, then at Rourke. File the motions, Walter ordered. Get the camera footage. Call the forensic analyst. If they want to play games with the legal system, then let us show them the price of treating the law like a joke. The peace at Ashford Hills did not last. It shattered at 2:00 in the afternoon with the sound of tires tearing up the gravel at the end of the long driveway. We were in the kitchen. Maren Pike had just left to file the emergency motions at the courthouse, and Gavin Rourke was in the library printing out more damning timelines. When the intercom buzzed, it was a harsh, jarring sound that made Noah jump in my arms. There is a vehicle at the main gate. The estate manager's voice came through the speaker, tight with tension. 3 individuals. They are demanding entry. They say they are family. I felt the blood drain from my face. They had found us, even 40 miles away, even behind iron gates. The gravity of their control was trying to pull me back. "Do not open the gate," Walter said into the intercom. His voice was calm, the voice of a man who had faced down union strikes and hostile takeovers. "Call the sheriff's department. Tell them we have trespassers refusing to leave. Then tell them we have a vulnerable infant on the premises." He turned to me. "Put on your coat, Tessa. We are going out there." "Out there?" I stammered, clutching Noah tighter. "Grandpa, I cannot face them. They will scream. They will make me feel small." "You are not going out there to argue," Walter said, handing me my phone. "You are going out there to witness. Marin said we needed proof of harassment. They just delivered it to our doorstep. Turn on your camera." We walked down the long driveway, Walter moving with a surprising speed for his age, his cane striking the frozen ground with a rhythmic thud. As the iron gates came into view, I saw them. My father's truck was parked haphazardly, blocking part of the entrance. They were standing on the other side of the bars like actors on a stage, already midway through a performance. My mother was the lead. She was clinging to the iron bars, her face wet with tears that looked almost genuine from a distance. When she saw me, she let out a wail that probably reached the neighbors half a mile away. "Tessa. Oh, thank God. My baby." She reached through the bars, her hands grasping at the air. "We have been terrified. We thought you were dead. Bring Noah to me. Bring my grandbaby here right now." My father was pacing behind her, his face a mottled red that signaled dangerous rage. "Open this gate, Walter," he bellowed. "You have no right to keep my daughter here. This is kidnapping. If you do not open this gate in 10 seconds, I am tearing it off the hinges." And there was Lena. She stood a little further back, wrapped in a pristine white coat, looking like the picture of the concerned sister. Her hands were clasped over her heart. "Tessa, please," she called out, her voice sweet and trembling. "Just come home. We are not mad. We just want to help you. You are not well. You know you are not well." I stopped 10 feet back from the gate. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. But I remembered Marin's instructions. Do not engage. Record. I raised my phone. My hand shook, but I kept the lens focused on them. "I am recording this interaction," I said. My voice was not loud, but in the cold winter air, it carried, "You have been asked to leave. You are trespassing." "Trespassing?" My father slammed his fist against the metal bars, the sound ringing out like a gong. "I am your father. You are stealing my grandson. Put that phone down and get in the truck before I lose my patience." "Tessa, honey," my mother sobbed, changing tactics instantly. "Don't listen to him. He is just scared. We love you. You are having an episode. Remember the last time? You get confused. You think people are against you. Just give me the baby so he is safe, and we can talk." It was a masterclass in manipulation. If a stranger had driven by, they would have seen a worried family trying to save a confused young mother from a grumpy old man. They knew exactly what buttons to push. They knew exactly how to make me doubt my own reality. But then I felt the weight of the phone in my hand, and I remembered the bank statements. I remembered the cruise. I remembered the forgery. "I am not confused, Mom," I said, "and I know about the signature." The wailing stopped instantly. My mother froze, her hands still gripping the bars. My father stopped pacing. Lena's expression of concern flickered, replaced by a sharp, calculating look. "I don't know what you are talking about," my mother said, her voice suddenly dry and hard. "The loan," I said. "The $50,000, the cruise, the furniture, I know all of it." Before they could respond, the sound of sirens cut through the air. 2 sheriff's cruisers pulled up behind my father's truck, lights flashing blue and red against the gray sky. My family's demeanor shifted again, faster than a chameleon changing colors. My mother slumped against the gate, looking frail. My father straightened his jacket, assuming the posture of a reasonable man dealing with a difficult situation. A deputy stepped out, adjusting his belt. "All right, folks, we got a call about a disturbance. Step away from the gate." "Officer, thank goodness," my mother said, rushing toward him. "My daughter, she is in there. She has postpartum psychosis. She took the baby and ran away. She is not safe. We just need to get her to a hospital." The deputy looked at me, then at the baby in my arms. "Ma'am, is that true?" In the past, I would have stuttered. I would have tried to explain, tried to justify, and ended up looking exactly as unstable as they claimed. But today, I had armor. I walked up to the gate, keeping the bars between us. I did not scream. I did not cry. I pulled up the email from Marin Pike on my phone screen. "Officer, my name is Tessa Montgomery. This is my grandfather's property. I am here of my own free will. These people have been harassing me for 2 days." I showed him the screen through the bars. "I have retained legal counsel. Marin Pike. We have filed for an emergency restraining order this morning based on financial fraud and identity theft. I am not unstable. I am a victim of a crime." The deputy looked at the legal header on the document. He looked at the calm, elderly man standing beside me. Then he looked at my parents, who were now looking less like concerned guardians and more like people whose bluff had been called. "Financial fraud?" the deputy repeated. "They forged my signature on a bank loan," I said clearly. "My attorney has the evidence. If they do not leave, I would like to press charges for trespassing and harassment right now." The deputy turned to my father. "Sir, this is a civil matter involving legal counsel. If she has an attorney and is refusing to go with you, you have no right to be here. You are on private property." "She is lying," my father shouted, losing his composure. "She is sick in the head. That old man is brainwashing her." "Step back to your vehicle." "Sir," the deputy ordered, his hand moving to rest on his belt. "I will not ask you twice. If you do not leave, you will be arrested for disorderly conduct." My mother looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. She had never been told no by a person in uniform in her life. She looked for a crack in my resolve, a way to guilt me into opening the gate. But Walter stood next to me like a stone wall, his hand resting gently on my shoulder. Defeated, they turned to go. My father swore under his breath, kicking gravel as he walked to the truck. My mother wiped her dry eyes and glared at me with pure venom before following him. But Lena lingered. She walked up to the bars, her white coat spotless, her face twisted into a sneer that stripped away every ounce of sisterly affection. She looked at the phone in my hand, then at the baby, and finally at the Mercedes parked visible in the driveway behind me. "You really think you are special, don't you?" Lena hissed, low enough that the cop couldn't hear. "You think because you married some oil worker and got pregnant, you deserve everything? You are pathetic. Tessa, you can't even drive that car. You don't deserve it. It was wasted on you." It was the pettiness that did it. After everything, the theft, the lies, the forgery, all she really cared about was the status symbol. She didn't want me to be safe. She just wanted to be the one behind the wheel. I lowered the phone. I looked her right in the eye. And for the first time in my life, I didn't see a sister. I saw a thief. "That car was never yours, Lena," I said, my voice steady as steel. "And neither was the money." Lena's mouth snapped shut. She turned on her heel and marched to the truck. As they drove away, followed by one of the cruisers, I didn't feel triumph. I felt a deep, exhausted hollowness. But as I looked down at Noah, still sleeping peacefully through the chaos, I knew one thing for sure. The lock was broken. I was free. The adrenaline from the confrontation at the gate began to fade, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The house was quiet again, but it felt like the silence before a second storm. Marin Pike did not sit down. She paced the length of the library, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor with a rhythm that sounded like a ticking clock. "They failed to get you physically," Marin said, stopping to look at me. which means they are going to pivot. They cannot force you into the car, so they will try to cut off your lifeline. They are going to call Caleb. My stomach dropped. Caleb was thousands of miles away on a rig in the North Sea. Working 12-hour shifts in brutal conditions, he was isolated, tired, and reliant on his phone for any connection to home. If my mother got to him first, if she poured her poison in his ear about me being unstable, about me kidnapping his son, he might freeze the accounts himself. He might believe them. I need to call him, I said, reaching for my phone. I need to tell him the truth before they spin it. Do not just tell him, Marin advised, handing me the stack of evidence Rourke had compiled. Show him. Men like Caleb deal in mechanics and hard facts. Do not give him emotion. Give him data. I went upstairs to the guest room to get a signal. It was night here, which meant it was likely early morning for him. I pressed the video call button and waited. My heart hammered against my ribs. If he looked at me with doubt, if he looked at me the way my mother did, I did not know if I could handle it. The screen flickered, and then Caleb's face appeared. He looked exhausted. Grease smudged on his cheek, his eyes red-rimmed. The background was the gray steel of the rig cabin. "Tessa?" he said. His voice was guarded. "I was just about to call you. Your mom sent me a text." I closed my eyes for a second. Of course she had. "What did she say, Caleb?" He rubbed his face with a calloused hand. "She said you are having a breakdown. She said you took Noah and disappeared to your grandfather's farm, and you are refusing to let them see the baby. She said she is worried you might hurt yourself." The lie was so precise, so perfectly crafted to trigger a husband's protective panic. "Caleb, look at me," I said, keeping my voice steady, just like Marin told me. "Does Noah look unsafe?" I turned the camera to the bassinet where Noah was sleeping, swaddled and peaceful. Then I turned it back to myself. "I am not having a breakdown," I said. "I am leaving a crime scene." Caleb frowned. "What are you talking about?" I held up the paper with the forged signature. The lighting in the room was dim, but the black ink was stark against the white page. "This is a loan application for $50,000 for my dad's business," I said. "It is dated 3 weeks ago. Look at the signature. Caleb." He squinted at the screen. "That looks like your signature." "It looks like it," I said. "But I was in the hospital with mastitis 3 weeks ago. I was not at the bank, and I definitely did not agree to put our financial future on the line for a business that is failing." I picked up the next sheet. "And this is a transfer of $12,000 from the trust fund Grandpa set up for Noah. It went into Mom's private account. The next day, she put a deposit down on a Caribbean cruise." Caleb went silent. The static of the connection hissed between us. I watched his face change. The confusion melted away, replaced by a slow, dawning horror. He was a man who worked himself to the bone to provide for us. The idea that someone was siphoning off that labor to buy vacations while his wife walked in the snow was hitting him hard. "She told me she was managing the money because you were overwhelmed," Caleb said, his voice low and dangerous. "She was managing it into her own pocket," I said. "They took the car keys. Caleb, they made me walk to get formula because they said I was too unstable to drive. But really, they just wanted Lena to have the Mercedes." "Lena is driving the car?" Caleb asked. "Every day." Caleb looked away from the camera for a moment, staring at the wall of his cabin. When he looked back, his eyes were cold. "I am looking at a text from your dad right now. He says I need to cut off your access to the joint account for your own good. He says I need to transfer the funds to him for safekeeping." "Do not do it," I said. "I am not going to do it," Caleb said. "I am going to kill him." "No," I said quickly. "We are handling it legally. I have a lawyer. Marin Pike. She is a shark. Caleb, she is going to get everything back. I will not let them turn you into a crazy person just so they can steal our son," Caleb said. "You send me whatever I need to sign. Freeze it all. Burn it down." I felt the tension in my shoulders snap. He believed me. He was on my team. Downstairs, Marin Pike was already drafting an email to Caleb. outlining the legal strategy and attaching the digital copies of the evidence so he would have ammunition if my parents tried to corner him again. I walked back into the library feeling lighter, like the heavy cloak of gaslighting had finally slipped off my shoulders. But the war was not over. Gavin Rourke was still sitting at the mahogany table, and the look on his face stopped me cold. He was holding a document that looked like a standard insurance policy declaration page. "Mrs. Montgomery," Rourke said, "we assumed that Lena taking the keys was a crime of opportunity. We assumed she just bullied you out of them once you brought the car home." "That is what happened," I said. "She took them off the counter." "No," Rourke said. "That is when she took the physical keys. But the theft happened way before that." He slid the paper across the table. "I pulled the insurance registration for the Mercedes," Rourke explained. "The car is titled in your name, yes, but look at the driver assignments." I looked at the line he was pointing to. Under primary operator, it did not say Tessa Montgomery. It said Lena Montgomery. My name was listed further down, under occasional driver. "This policy was written 4 days before you even gave birth," Rourke said. "They called the agent and set this up before the car was even in the driveway. They designated Lena as the primary driver from day one. This means that if you had driven that car and gotten into an accident, the insurance company could have denied the claim because the risk profile was fraudulent. They did not just borrow your car, Tessa. They structurally reassigned it to her before you ever touched the steering wheel." I stared at the paper. It was so cold, so calculated. While I was waddling around the house, heavy with pregnancy, dreaming about driving my baby to the park in my safe new car, they were on the phone with an insurance agent, writing me out of the picture. "It was premeditated," I whispered. "Exactly," Marin Pike said from the doorway. She had heard everything. "This was not a family helping each other out. This was a hostile takeover disguised as a support system. They wrapped the theft in the word family so you would not fight back. But this document proves they never intended for you to own that car. You were just the name on the title so Grandpa would write the check." Walter stood up from his chair. His face was gray, but his eyes were burning. "They planned it," Walter said. "They planned to strip you of everything before Noah even took his first breath." "And now," Pike said, picking up her briefcase, "we are going to show a judge exactly how long this con has been running." The days leading up to the hearing were not filled with screaming matches or dramatic confrontations. They were filled with the quiet, terrifying sound of paper being shuffled, stapled, and filed. It was the sound of a cage being dismantled, bar by iron bar. Marin Pike moved with the efficiency of a surgeon. She finalized the civil suit, a document that read less like a legal complaint and more like an autopsy of my family's betrayal. We were not just asking for the return of the funds. We were asking for treble damages, triple the amount stolen, citing civil theft statutes. We were demanding the immediate return of the Mercedes, full restitution for the unauthorized credit card usage, and most critically, a permanent restraining order preventing any of them from coming within 500 yards of Noah or myself. Simultaneously, the criminal investigation had taken on a life of its own. Sergeant Vance had kept her word. Detectives had subpoenaed the bank records and the surveillance footage from the branch where the loan was signed. They were building a case for forgery, identity theft, and telecommunications harassment. My parents were no longer just facing a disgruntled daughter. They were facing the state of Ohio. But the most damning piece of evidence came from Gavin Rourke. He had spent 48 hours constructing what he called a timeline of discrepancy. It was a massive visual chart, printed on poster board for the judge. On the left side, Rourke listed every text message I had sent begging for money. "Mom, Noah needs sensitive formula. It is $30. Mom, I need gas money to get to the pediatrician." On the right side, matched to the exact timestamps of those texts, were the transactions from my account. "Look at this," Rourke said, pointing to a date in mid-January. "You texted your mother at 10 in the morning saying you were out of diapers and panicked. At 12:30, she withdrew $400 from your account at a casino ATM in Indiana." I stared at the chart. A casino, While I was reusing diapers because I was too scared to ask for more, my mother was playing slots with my son's trust fund. And here, Rourke continued, pointing to another line. February 2nd. You asked for money for a copay. She told you to stop being so needy. That night, she spent $250 at a French bistro in downtown Columbus. It was nauseating. It was proof that their cruelty was not accidental. It was a lifestyle choice. Walter added the final nail to the coffin. He provided the court with a stack of emails dating back 5 years. Every single one was explicit. This money is for Tessa's education. This car is for Tessa's safety. The trust is for Noah's future. There was no ambiguity. No room for them to claim it was a family pot. They had taken gifts meant for a child and used them to fund their own delusions of grandeur. My family, realizing the walls were closing in, did exactly what Marin predicted. They went on the offensive. They hired a lawyer, a man known for loud suits and louder arguments, and they took the battle to the court of public opinion. My phone, though still filtered by Marin, started lighting up with messages from old high school friends and neighbors. Tessa, your mom is posting that you joined a cult? Tessa, I heard you are on drugs and refused a drug test? Tessa, why won't you let your parents see their grandson? They are heartbroken. They were painting a picture of a saintly couple trying to save their daughter from a mental break. They were calling me ungrateful, unstable, and cruel. They were trying to poison the community against me so that if I walked into that courtroom, the judge would already see me as the villain. Marin Pike did not flinch. She simply printed out the social media posts, the rumors, and the smear campaign. This is retaliation, Marin said, adding the screenshots to our evidence pile. And it is defamation. We are going to ask the judge to seal the record of your address and grant a protective order to stop them from talking about you publicly. They are trying to try this case on Facebook because they know they will lose in a court of law. The night before the hearing, the farmhouse was quiet. Walter had gone to bed early, exhausted by the strain. I stood in the bathroom of the guest suite, staring at my reflection in the mirror. I looked different than I had the day Walter picked me up on the side of the road. The windburn was gone. The dark circles under my eyes were fading. But the biggest change was in the set of my jaw. I practiced what I would say. For 29 years, my default setting had been apology. I'm sorry to be a bother. I am sorry I'm not good enough. I am sorry I need help. I am not sorry, I said to the mirror. My voice wavered, so I said it again, louder. I am not sorry. I thought about the forgery. I thought about the casino ATM receipt. I thought about Lena sneering at me through the gate. I do not need them to forgive me. I told my reflection. I do not need them to love me. I need them to leave us alone. I looked at the baby monitor on the counter, watching the rhythmic rise and fall of Noah's chest. I need my son to be safe, I whispered. And safety costs. The morning of the hearing was gray and sleeting, a grim Ohio sky that matched the gravity of the day. We drove to the courthouse in Walter's Lincoln. I wore a navy blue suit Walter had bought for me, sharp and tailored. I did not look like a frazzled new mother. I looked like a woman who balanced ledgers. As we walked up the courthouse steps, I saw them. My parents and Lena were standing near the metal detectors. They were dressed in their Sunday best, performing the role of the grieving family perfectly. My mother was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. My father was looking stoic and misunderstood. Lena was holding a Bible, a prop so blatant it almost made me laugh. When they saw me, my mother started to rush forward, her arms open, ready to create a scene for the bystanders. Tessa, oh, Tessa, please. Marin Pike stepped in front of me. She did not touch my mother. She just occupied the space with such force that my mother stopped dead in her tracks. You will stay back, Marin said, her voice low and dangerous. If you speak to my client before we enter that courtroom, I will have the bailiff arrest you for witness tampering. My mother recoiled as if she had been slapped. She looked at me, pleading with her eyes, trying to trigger the guilt button she had installed in me since birth. I looked at her. I saw the woman who had gambled away my diaper money. I saw the woman who had gaslit me into thinking I was crazy so she could steal my life. I did not look down. I did not apologize. I tightened my grip on the handle of the stroller and walked past her. "Let's go," I said to Walter. I pushed the heavy double doors of the courtroom open. The air inside was cool and smelled of furniture polish and judgment. I walked down the center aisle, my heels clicking on the floor, not as a daughter seeking approval, but as a plaintiff seeking justice. I took my seat at the table, placed my hands flat on the wood, and waited for the gavel to fall. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was not theatrical, it was sterile. My parents and Lena sat at the defense table, and the arrogance they had displayed at the farm gate was gone. In its place was a palpable, vibrating fear. They stared at the stack of files sitting on Marin Pike's desk, a pile of evidence 3 inches thick that documented every lie, every stolen dollar, and every forged document. They looked small. They looked tired. They looked like people who realized too late that they were not the main characters of the world. Their lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who wore a suit that was slightly too shiny, tried to do exactly what Marin predicted. He stood up and adjusted his tie, smiling sympathetically at the judge. "Your Honor," Sterling began, his voice dripping with condescension, "this is a tragic misunderstanding. We have a new mother suffering from severe postpartum emotional volatility. My client stepped in to manage her affairs because she was simply unable to cope. They were not stealing. They were stewarding resources for the family unit. To criminalize their love and support is a miscarriage of justice." It was a good speech. If I had been the old Tessa, I might have believed it. I might have felt guilty. But then Marin Pike stood up. She did not smile. She did not use flowery language. She picked up a single piece of paper. "Stewarding resources?" Marin asked, her voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "Is that what we call withdrawing $400 from a child's trust fund at a casino in Indiana? Is that what we call spending $3,000 on a luxury cruise deposit while the plaintiff was walking 2 miles in the snow to buy formula?" Marin walked toward the bench, handing the judge the financial map Gavin Rourke had built. "This is not a support system, Your Honor." Marin continued, "This is predation. We have bank logs showing withdrawals made at times when my client was documented to be at pediatric appointments. We have video evidence of the defendant screaming abuse and attempting to breach a secure gate. And we have an insurance policy taken out 4 days before the plaintiff gave birth, naming the sister, Lena Montgomery, as the primary driver of a vehicle she did not own." The judge, a stern woman with glasses perched on the end of her nose, flipped through the pages. Her expression grew darker with every turn. Then it was my turn. I took the stand. My hands were folded in my lap. I did not shake. I did not look at my mother, who was weeping softly into a tissue, or my father, who was staring at the table. "Mrs. Montgomery," Marin asked me gently, "why did you leave your parents' home?" "Because my son was hungry," I said. The truth was simple. I had $20 hidden in a boot. My bicycle tires had been slashed. I was walking to the store in 20-degree weather because my mother had drained my account and my sister had taken my car keys. I realized that if I stayed, they would not just take my money. They would take my ability to be a mother. The room was silent. Then came the hammer blow. Marin called the handwriting expert to the stand. He projected 2 images onto the screen. One was my actual signature. The other was the signature on the loan application my father had taken out. "The variance in pressure is consistent with forgery," the expert stated flatly, "but we do not need to rely on handwriting analysis alone. We pulled the electronic timestamp from the bank's system when this document was scanned and filed." Marin turned to the judge. The document was notarized and filed at the bank branch at 10:14 in the morning on November 3rd. She paused for effect. On November 3rd at 10:14 in the morning, Tessa Montgomery was in a hospital bed, under anesthesia, recovering from an emergency C-section. She was physically incapable of being at that bank. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. It was undeniable. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a crime. At the defense table, the alliance fractured. Lena, realizing that the timestamp proved she or my mother had impersonated me, suddenly stood up. Her face was flushed, her composure shattering. "I am not going to jail for this," Lena shouted, her voice shrill and panicked. She pointed a shaking finger at my mother. "She told me to go. She said Tessa wouldn't care. She said it was family money anyway. I just did what she told me to do." "Sit down," Mr. Sterling hissed, trying to pull her back, but the damage was done. My mother gasped, looking at Lena with betrayal written all over her face. My father put his head in his hands. The loving family facade had dissolved, revealing the nest of vipers underneath. The judge banged her gavel, silencing the chaos. She looked at my family with an expression of absolute disgust. "I have heard enough," the judge said. "The evidence of financial exploitation, fraud, and coercive control is overwhelming. I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts." She looked down at my parents. "You are ordered to pay full restitution of the $24,000 misappropriated from the plaintiff, plus legal fees and damages. The loan authorized under the forged signature is declared null and void regarding the plaintiff's liability, and I am referring the evidence of forgery to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution." Then she looked at Lena. "You are to return the vehicle immediately, and I am granting a permanent restraining order. None of you are to come within 500 yards of Tessa Montgomery or her son, Noah Montgomery. If you violate this order, you will go to prison." The judge turned to the bailiff. "Retrieve the keys to the Mercedes from the defendant." Lena, pale and trembling, dug into her purse. She pulled out the key fob, the one I had never held. She handed it to the bailiff. The bailiff walked across the room and placed the cold silver plastic into my hand. I closed my fingers around it. It was just a piece of plastic, but it felt like the weight of the world falling away. 3 months later. The sun was setting over Lakeshore Heights, casting a golden glow over the balcony of my new apartment. It was small, but it was mine. I had used the restitution money to put a down payment on a safe place for us. I had a job as a project coordinator at Northgate Atelier, a boutique architecture firm. The work was hard, but I loved it. I walked down to the parking garage, Noah cooing in his carrier. I strapped him into the car seat in the back of the silver Mercedes. He was bigger now, his cheeks round and pink, his eyes bright. I climbed into the driver's seat. I adjusted the mirror. I started the engine. The heated seat warmed my back, but this time, there was no guilt. There was no fear. My phone buzzed in the console. It was a text from Caleb. He was coming home in 2 weeks. We were going to start over. Just the 3 of us. I pulled out of the garage and onto the highway. The road ahead was open. They had tried to bury me. They had tried to erase me. They thought that because I was quiet, I was weak. They thought I would stay afraid forever. But the day my grandpa asked, "I gave you a car, right?" was the day they started losing everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know where you are tuning in from and if you have ever had to deal with toxic family members yourself. Please remember to subscribe to the channel Lila Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and smash the hype button to help this story reach more people who might need to hear it.